Here to talk about the transition, stimulus negotiations, and more are Congressman Mike Quigley, a Democrat who represents Illinois' 5th District, which includes parts of Chicago's North Side and stretches west to Elmhurst. Congressman Bill Foster, a Democrat who represents Illinois' 11th District, which includes parts of Aurora, Bolingbrook, and Joliet. Congressman Rodney Davis, a Republican who represents Illinois' 13th District, which includes Springfield and southwest toward St. Louis. And Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a Republican who represents Illinois' 16th District, which includes 14 counties and stretches around from Illinois' northern to eastern borders. Gentlemen, welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. We've got a full slate, a lot to get to. So I'll start with you, Congressman Quigley. Yesterday, as you know, the GSA Director, Emily Murphy, formally authorized the beginning of the transition process after a lot of public pressure and a delay. Are there consequences to that delay at this point?
Look, I think they can make up for it. It was getting very precarious, and obviously it's important to national security. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and that tradition is extremely important now. At this point in time, I welcome the news. I appreciate the difficult choice Ms. Murphy felt that she had. In the end, as they say, it's never too late to do the right thing. We're looking forward to moving on.
And Congressman Kinzinger, you were one of the first Republicans to congratulate President-elect Biden. You've been one of the most forceful calling out President Trump and his lawyers for spreading baseless conspiracy theories about the election. At the same time, there's a Monmouth poll that shows that 77% of Republicans polled believe that Biden won this election because of fraud. How do you convince your voters that it might not be the outcome they wanted, but it's a legitimate outcome?
So I think it just takes time. You know, I think this is something that in the height of the emotion right now, everybody's upset, they're in their corner, or they're overly, happy, depends on what side you were on. And I think over time, it's important for us to push back on misinformation, to be clear that the most important thing that can happen in a democracy in a republic like ours is that we respect the election and respect the election results. As we know, President Trump had every right to pursue any concerns he had in court. But we've got to move on. We have a long transition period, but it's definitely time to move on with this, and so we're doing the right thing.
Congressman Davis, I haven't seen you make a statement one way or another about the election. Do you acknowledge the results, that Biden is the president-elect?
Well, it looks like as of today, with the Michigan certification, he has gone over 270. But the election is going to be decided officially, like every presidential election, when the electors meet. I got to tell you, I've been busy. I run the House Administration Committee for the Republicans, and I've got election observers in states like California, Iowa, and New York. And it's amazing to me that we've had an entire state presidential race recount in Georgia, and at the same time, we still don't have congressional races decided in places like California and New York. That's the tragedy of this election cycle, and that's what we're going to hope to investigate later as to what we can do better.
As this is happening, President-elect Joe Biden introduced some key members today for who he hopes to be part of his national security cabinet. Here's what Vice President-elect Kamala Harris had to say about this group.
These women and men are patriots and public servants to their core. And they are leaders, the leaders we need to meet the challenges of this moment.
Congressman Bill Foster, Democrats are happy about a return to sort of a more, quote-unquote, normal foreign policy approach, although wasn't this what President Trump ran successfully on in 2016 against the typical trade deals and foreign intervention?
Yeah, well, and I think that his experiment with putting amateurs in charge has been a failed experiment. You know, when he gets people with no foreign service experience and puts them in charge of foreign affairs, we don't do very well in our negotiations, and unfortunately American workers, manufacturers, farmers get badly hurt with a failed foreign policy. Same thing in science, same thing in aspects of financial services.
And so all these nominees are going to come down to being confirmed in the Senate. Congressman Kinzinger, do you expect there to be partisan backlash to some of these nominees?
I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a fight. I mean, I think generally President-elect Biden's nominees will be put in, short of any kind of information that we didn't know. But the Senate has every right to really go back and forth and do battle. I mean, look at, what was done under President Trump. But I think the bottom line is, Joe Biden has every right to put who he wants in there as long as there's nothing big and glaring. And the Senate has every right to go through that. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a change for sure. My commitment is to try to do my best to work with the next administration, but also be consistent and call it out when I disagree, but do so in a professional way. That's what's missing in politics, is actually being adults about things now on both sides of the aisle, quite honestly.
Congressman Quigley, there are reports right now that President-elect Biden is pushing Congress, especially Democrats in Congress, to come together on a new COVID relief bill. What are you hearing? What's the latest right now?
There are two things I was concerned about after the election other than transition. That's funding this government, because obviously the continuing resolution we have is going to run out, and a long-term COVID care package. We're hearing just minutes ago that first part of that, the funding, the overall funding mechanism has been agreed to, the amounts, the 302Bs. So that's good news. There's bipartisan support, bicameral support. That next one's going to be tougher. Mr. McConnell says he's all in favor of this.
What are the amounts, Congressman?
Well, each subcommittee is differently. But it's a comfortable amount that folks will agree to. So each one of the 12 bills is separate. On the COVID care, that's a different story. I'd like to think we get something done, at the very least, to catch us through February, March. I think my advice to the new Biden administration coming in January is, let's do something that takes us through a whole year. Let's give the markets the security and the stability they're looking for.
Congressman
people
Davis,
who are looking for home security and food security.
It's not just markets that want security, but 12 million Americans are poised to lose unemployment benefits the day after Christmas without new stimulus. Will you support a new bill that provides relief for individuals, businesses, municipalities?
No, that's what I was finishing with.
I'm sorry,
it's
Congressman Davis.
Security, it's food security. It's obviously.
I want to get Congressman Davis here. Sorry, Congressman Quigley.
Sorry.
When we've seen bipartisan negotiations come to fruition, we've all supported those pieces of legislation in the past, and that's what it's going to take. But we haven't seen that since April, and that's what's been most frustrating. So I think all of us on this call.
All right, we'll be joined again by these members of Congress later in the program to discuss the future of both political parties as well as the COVID spike and distribution of vaccines. But for now, our thanks to Congressman Quigley, Foster, Davis, and Kinzinger. Joining us once again to talk about the future of both the Democratic and Republican parties are Congressman Mike Quigley, Bill Foster, Rodney Davis, and Adam Kinzinger. I want to continue on the subject of COVID. Amid debate over stimulus, Congressman Foster, there is exciting news about 3 potential vaccines here from 3 different pharmaceutical companies. When could those get into the hands of Illinoisans, and how many Illinoisans will see the vaccine in this first phase?
Well, aside from just the wonderful news, which really is the result of just the efforts of scientists around the world, and federal career scientists, the scientists in industry, they've all come together. They've been working hard. Congress deserves a lot of credit for the money that we gave them and the explicit directions to do what they've executed very well on. And so there's a lot of good news, and I think there was there was a lot of holding the information tight until just about a week ago, and then we started to get the individual scientists giving us the information about what the real status was on things like delivery times. We're going to see in December, if things go as expected, we're going to see first responders and medical personnel start getting the first of these doses, and probably by the end of January, there will be enough to get most of them done. And then, according to the prioritizations that have been established by the medical associations, looking at the bioethics of this, we're going to see tiers of more endangered people, starting with the elderly, those with significant conditions. And so the hope is that by probably the second or certainly the third quarter, anyone who wants a vaccine can get a vaccine in this country.
And we'll certainly
because of the high effectiveness and apparent safety, I'm really hoping that everyone takes the vaccine as soon as it's allotted to them.
We'll be watching that rollout in the beginning of the year. I want to move to foreign policy for a second. Congressman Kinzinger, in his waning days of his presidency, President Trump has announced a major troop withdrawal from Afghanistan and Iraq. He announced withdrawing from the Open Skies Treaty to do reconnaissance missions over Russian airspace. Your reaction to those moves?
Well, first off, the Open Skies Treaty, I'm fairly in agreement with, because if you actually look at what the Russians put off limits for U.S., but we don't do for them, it's really unfair, and that needs to be renegotiated. But I have very big disagreements with him on what he's doing in Iraq and Afghanistan. The president talks about the commitments he made in the campaign. I respect that. But his biggest promise in 2016 was the defeat of ISIS. And I think the message that this is going to send both to the recruiters in ISIS and to the future of ISIS is not beneficial. And lastly, I think it puts President-elect Biden in a really tough position. He's either going to have to make a decision to withdraw, in which case he will own the consequences. We all know those consequences will be bad, or have to return to the original troop number that we're at today, where there's going to be a whole new news story about, President Biden increasing the number of troops. So I think it's the wrong move, but, he is president now and for the next couple months.
So it does sound like a catch-22. Congressman Quigley, what would you advise President-elect Biden do to continue a drawdown or to draw back up?
Well, let me agree with my colleague about open skies in terms of the problems. But the difference I have with the current president is I wouldn't withdraw. I would renegotiate while we still have those protections. In the end, that treaty is important. The message we've sent since he's been president is to withdraw from treaties. We haven't created a whole lot of new ones since then. And I think as Madeleine Albright said, you can't lead the world by leaving it. In the final analysis, there is some need to have troops in forward locations, if only to find out what dangers exist out there. In other words, our intelligence operations depend on some military cooperation to succeed and to keep us safe.
All right, let's talk about a little politics. Congressman Davis, there's a lot written about the fact that President Trump, once he leaves office, does want to stay on as sort of the head of the GOP. There's speculation he's going to announce a run for president in 2024. Would he be your choice for the GOP candidate for president in 2024?
Well, there's a long time over the next 4 years to see if he wants to do that. He may enjoy the private sector a lot more than he enjoyed the public sector, but you would have to say right now he would be the front runner. And I think he's got a good record to run on. We talk about foreign policy. Look at what he's been able to do with Secretary of State Pompeo and the Foreign Service to be able to create much more peace in the Middle East. Countries that are recognizing the state of Israel that hadn't happened under any other previous administration.
All right,
a record of economic growth and a record of getting the dollars together and putting the right people in place to actually defeat this virus.
So it sounds like at this point you believe he'd have a lot to run on in 2024. Let's talk about a little bit of local politics. Illinois Democrats right now are split on whether embattled House Speaker Michael Madigan should go on as the leader of the state's Democratic Party. Here's what Senator Dick Durbin said on this program.
We paid a heavy price for the Speaker's chairmanship of the Democratic Party. Candidates who had little or no connection with him whatsoever were being tarred as Madigan allies who were behind corruption and so forth and so on. It was really disconcerting to see the price that we paid on that. I hope he takes that to heart and understands that his presence as chairman of our party has not helped.
Foster, the floodgates have opened here. Do you believe the Illinois Democratic Party is best served with Speaker Madigan here as the figurehead?
I agree with Senator Durbin that we have paid a tremendous price, and so I think it's correct that Democrats all over Illinois are stepping back and seeing if we actually needed a generational change in that position.
Congressman Quigley, generational change. Someone else should be helming the party.
It looks long overdue. Look, as a 10-year Cook County commissioner, I was asking for a change, not just for the ethics reasons. And we've learned in Illinois that, corruption wears both hats, unfortunately. But I thought we needed a clean slate, not just politically, but as a role as Speaker to push forward an agenda of reform and economic responsibility.
Congressman Kinzinger, speaking of politics, national Republicans believe that the 2022 Senate seat here in Illinois held by Senator Duckworth could be in play. Is that a seat that you might be interested in going for?
No, look, it's certainly not something I'm sitting around thinking about right now, honestly. And that's not a political answer. I know it sounds like one. I'm focused on, first off, getting sworn in January, as all four of us here are, and really doing what I think is right. Being a Republican in Illinois is not necessarily the easiest party to belong to, so I'll never rule anything out. But quite honestly, I'm not sitting around, giddy and planning and everything, and we'll just see how the things shake out. But bottom line is I'm excited about, doing my sixth term in the House and doing some big things with Rodney and these others, with Congressman Foster and Quigley.
Congressman Davis, you know, it's no secret that the nation is incredibly polarized. There's so much gridlock in Washington. I think there's a big part of the electorate that just does want some of the temperature to come down. What are the things that you think that that Congress can compromise on, that Republicans can compromise on with the incoming Biden administration? Issues like infrastructure, COVID relief, anything else?
Yeah, COVID relief, we can defeat this virus. We can make sure we have a good plan to get the vaccine out to every single American at a time that's going to be convenient for the most vulnerable and our healthcare workers, infrastructure, agriculture. These are big things, but let's not forget what's happening in Illinois. And I'm glad that many of my Democratic colleagues and Senator Courageous, Senator Durbin, who just got elected to a 6-year term, finally, after he gets elected, decides to come out and say that Mike Madigan shouldn't be the party chair. He should have said that before the election. These are the frustrating things for many Illinoisans, and especially the folks in downstate Illinois that I represent, and even the state capitol.
Well, we hope to have you all back on this show to discuss these things and more. It's great to have all 4 of you here, Congressman Mike Quigley, Bill Foster, Rodney Davis, and Adam Kinzinger. Thanks so much.
Thank you.